Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost after 9 years. He's doubled the debt, doubled housing costs. He's increased spending by nearly 80%. What did we get for the money? The worst per-person income growth in the entire G7 and the worst mortgage debt of all of those countries. When will he realize that the more he spends, the worse things get?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives have been talking down the economy for a long time now without understanding that Canada has actually the strongest macroeconomic performance in the G7. And our perspective is to put that solid footing of the Government of Canada in service of Canadians by investing in housing, by investing in dental care, by investing in childcare, by investing in the supports that Canadians need in this difficult time. His solution is for governments to invest less in Canadians for ideological reasons, to be there less for people when they need it most.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, more proof that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. He tells Canadians they've never had it so good. He doubled the debt, doubled housing costs, forced 2 million people to a food bank. He brags that he spends $87 billion on housing programs, and what did it get us? Got us the worst housing inflation of any country in the G7, the second worst out of nearly 40 OECD countries. Why does he always spend the most to achieve the worst?
Right. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians will take no lessons from a former housing minister who was in a government that didn't believe in investing in housing. Obviously, over decades, Mr. Speaker, the federal government had underinvested in housing, and it has led to the challenges we're facing now. That is why we are putting, and have been putting, in service of Canadians since 2017, the solid fiscal position of the federal government to invest in Canadians, to invest in communities, to invest in housing, to help solve this challenge that people are facing around the world, that we are solving despite.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's absolutely right that we did not waste the billions of dollars that he's now put into his programs, but here are the results. The average rent for a one-bedroom when I was housing minister was $973, and we built 80,000 apartment units at that low rate when I was minister. Now the cost has more than doubled. Meanwhile, Stats Canada reports that incomes are down $17,000 per family. Why are Canadians making $17,000 less to pay double the price for a home?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Here's the question Canadians should be asking the Leader of the Opposition. Given that Canada has one of the strongest economic balance sheets in the G7 right now, country for country compared, should we be investing to support Canadians and create housing with that solid balance sheet, or should, as the Conservative Leader is proposing, we cut programs, we reduce investment, and we do less for Canadians? We should be putting the strong fiscal position of this government in service of Canadians. That's what we're doing. That's what he opposes.
Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the NDP leader was just asking about why the Prime Minister gave tens of millions of dollars in corporate handouts to powerful grocery chains. So the answer, of course, is that he voted to let the Prime Minister do that. Not a single penny of that money could have gone without the vote of the NDP coalition partner. But we learned something else, that this might have been due to the influence of the NDP leader's spokesman and brother, whose company is a lobbyist for Metro. Would the Prime Minister support an investigation into whether or not the NDP leader's spokesman and brother has been unduly influencing the leader of the NDP?
The Right Honourable Prime. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we can see very clearly that all the stories out about the lobbyists' connections with the Leader of the Opposition are actually hurting the Leader of the Opposition, which is why he's asking those questions of the NDP. But he has an opportunity right now, Mr. Speaker, to make it clear that he stands with Canadians and stands to ask the wealthiest to pay a little more by announcing now that he will support our measure on increasing the capital gains imposition on Canadians, asking the wealthiest to pay a little bit more. He has dodged that question since the budget came out. Does he support the increase on the capital gains inclusion rate?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I do support the Prime Minister paying more tax on the trust fund where he sheltered all of his money. Absolutely. He doesn't, unfortunately, support his own policies. That's why he won't put them into a budget bill. But one tax he is increasing is the carbon tax on food. He's doing it with the help of the NDP. We already have the second highest carbon tax in the entire developed world. And yet, if the NDP Liberal government is re-elected, they plan to quadruple that tax to 61 cents a litre on the farmers and truckers who bring us our food. How will Canadians afford to eat, heat, and house themselves?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Canadians saw that he avoided pronouncing on whether or not he supports our increase to the capital gains inclusions rate. But in regards to his deflection onto carbon pricing works. We are on track to meet our emissions for the first time in any government in Canadian history. And Canadians get more money back in their pockets thanks to the Canada Carbon Rebate. And families are already using that rebate to help pay their bills and plan their monthly budgets. Meanwhile, the Conservative leader continues to oppose every measure we put forward for both affordability and fighting climate change.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister, just like his carbon tax, is not worth the cost. The tax is already up to 17 cents a litre, higher than he promised it would go. And he plans to quadruple it further to 61 cents a litre. This after it is a proven environmental failure. Canada ranks 62nd out of 67 countries when it comes to fighting climate change. And this is precisely because what he has is a tax plan and not an environmental plan. Will he stop? Why won't he adopt our common sense plan for technology and not taxes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the Leader of the Opposition wants to present an actual plan to fight climate change, we'd love to see it. But he has refused to take any measure to fight climate change, period. He even doesn't recognize that pollution has a cost, which will only keep rising if we don't fight climate change, with extreme weather events and health impacts increasingly impacting on Canadians. Indeed, the Conservative leader thinks it should be free to pollute, and that we shouldn't be giving more money to Canadians through the Canada Carbon Rebate. We will continue to have an effective plan to fight climate change that is reducing emissions and putting more money back in Canadians' pockets with the CCR.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, since the Prime Minister introduced his carbon tax on the farmers who grow the food and the truckers who ship the food, it has raised the price on all who buy the food, with a record-smashing 2 million visits to food banks every single year. 50% of Canadians buying food past best before dates. 20% of them have gotten sick as a result of it. The Prime Minister promised that he was going to help the middle class and those working hard to join it. Now, the so-called middle class can't afford food and homes. Is that what he meant by help?
Yeah. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, 8 out of 10 Canadians, middle income and lower income Canadians primarily, do better with the Canada Carbon Rebate that lands in their bank accounts 4 times a year because of the price of pollution. But if the leader opposite actually cared about affordability and supporting vulnerable Canadians, he'd be standing up to support our measure on dental care, which has now delivered dental care to 30,000 vulnerable seniors across this country already in just a few weeks. He would be supporting our initiatives to help families. He'd be supporting our initiatives to help with childcare.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Oh, we have to do this all over again with him. The Parliamentary Budget Officer produced a report. I'm going to read the title so that he can Google it right now, Mr. Speaker. It is called the Parliamentary Budget Officer's Report on the Distribution of Costs and Benefits under the Carbon Pricing Program. He can look at page 3, where every single province that has the tax sees middle-class Canadians and 60% of families paying more in tax than they get back in benefits. Why won't he get to know the facts and axe the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As opposed to the Leader of the Opposition's campaign to simply axe the facts, we are going to continue to stand with the science, the evidence, the research, the economists who have all pointed out, including the Parliamentary Budget Officer, that the Canada Carbon Rebate puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 families in the jurisdictions across the country in which it is effective in bringing down our emissions while creating economic growth as we invest in cleaner technology and good jobs and careers for the future. We have a plan for the economy and the environment. He does not.
I'm going to ask members, please. I know sometimes that members don't like hearing the question or the answer, but I'm asking all members, please, the only one who is standing up to, recognized by the Speaker, has the right to stand up and to ask the question. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, with his comedy routine, I was going to say that he shouldn't quit his day job, but actually, he should quit his day job. But he shouldn't go into number crunching, whatever his next job is, because he doesn't believe the economy is about numbers. And I don't blame him, because if I had his economic record, I wouldn't want to talk about numbers either. But it might help him to go to the library and quietly study just a little bit. Will he commit to reading page 3 of the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report, which demonstrates Canadians pay more than they get back in the tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Budget Officer and far many more experts and economists have clearly demonstrated that the money that returns to Canadians through the Canada Carbon Rebate 4 times a year is greater than 8 out of 10 Canadians pay every year with the price on pollution. Those are the simple facts, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to invest in Canadians. We will continue to support with affordability. We will continue to put the best balance sheet in the G7 in the service of Canadians through investments and support, unlike the cuts he's proposing.
Hear, hear.